I used to believe silence was a form of protection, like living in a glass sanctuary, delicate yet see-through, a brittle barrier between me and the storm of expectations swirling outside. But silence has a weight of its own. It seeps into your marrow, suffocating and still, until the burden becomes unbearable. That's when I realized the only escape was to break it completely. My family thought they understood me. They believed my value could be calculated by boardroom titles and luxury office views. But they had no idea I was constructing something far greater, quietly, out of their sight. And when I finally chose to speak, I didn't just disrupt their carefully curated world. I began crafting my own anew. 3 days ago, I sat in my mother's immaculate dining room, a place so pristine it felt like a museum where even conversation was curated. The silverware sparkled like polished daggers, and every sentence carried the weight of a loaded weapon. The air smelled faintly of lavender, but beneath it was something colder: legacy, pressure, judgment. My father, Richard, stood at the table's head, his presence commanding, his shadow long and solemn across the gleaming mahogany like a verdict waiting to be passed. My mother, Claire, was beside him, poised and perfect, her pearl necklace resting around her neck like a delicate executioner's rope. Nathan, my older brother, reclined with ease in his custom suit, his latest achievement, senior counsel at one of the city's most prestigious law firms, practically radiating from his skin. Across from me sat Uncle Thomas, the family's unofficial judge and jury, already looking at me like I was a misstep that should have been corrected long ago. "Ellaner," my father began, his tone precise and cold enough to slice through steel. "We've gathered because we're worried." Worried. The word dropped like a weight in my chest. I shifted slightly, pulling at the hem of my muted gray sweater, a deliberate choice, a silent protest against their obsession with status symbols. They assumed it signified failure, proof that I'd fallen behind. And I couldn't help but relish the misinterpretation. "Your brother just became senior counsel at Harper & Klein," my father continued, gesturing proudly toward Nathan, who flashed a grin that sat somewhere between pity and superiority. "Youngest to ever make it, I might add. And you?" He let the question linger, flicking his hand as if dismissing a disappointing stock. "You're throwing your life away on some tech daydream." My mother reached for her wine, her fingers steady at first but giving the slightest quiver, barely visible but enough for me to catch. "Sweetheart, you were exceptional at Diote. Director at just 27. You had a future people envy. Why give it all up? For what? To fiddle around with code?" Uncle Thomas scoffed, voice thick with scorn. "Software, like it's some sort of side project. 3 years. Ellaner. That's how long you've been wasting your talent. Not to mention your inheritance." I kept my expression unreadable, my hands neatly folded in my lap. But inside, I was watching the clock. My phone lay silently on the table, face down, screen dark. But it was ticking. A timer was running. 7 p.m. 2 minutes to go before their world tilted. Nathan leaned toward me, his voice calm, almost gentle, the kind of tone people use when speaking to someone they think is lost. "Ellie, I understand. Reinventing yourself isn't easy. But Harper & Klein is expanding. They're hiring." "I could make a few calls," Nathan offered, voice thick with condescension. "Get you back into corporate law. You don't have to keep working out of that shoebox you call an office." That word, struggling, cut deep. Not because it held truth, but because they believed it so completely. Last Christmas, Nathan had proudly announced to the entire family that my startup had collapsed. What he didn't know was that I had pivoted, rebuilt from the ashes, and grown something far more powerful than his firm could ever comprehend. For half a year, they bombarded me with job listings, scheduled awkward sit-downs that felt more like interventions, and exchanged whispered judgments over dinner. My mother even sent me a self-help book about rediscovering one's purpose, like I was lost and flailing. I glanced at my phone. 7:03 p.m. One more minute. My heartbeat thudded like a drum, but my voice was steady. Would you like to know what I've really been working on? Yes, please, my mother said quickly, her voice coated in a mix of anxiety and hope, as if she were desperate for something to cling to. I smiled, a small, precise curve of my lips. I think Forbes might explain it better than I could. Right on cue, her phone buzzed. She picked it up, scanned the screen, and froze. Her wine glass tilted in her hand, the crimson liquid threatening to spill. The headline shone across the display. Nova Shield valued at $5 billion. The covert startup transforming AI defense. Beneath it, a photo of me. Ellaner Kaine, 30, founder and CEO. Silence blanketed the room, thick and breathless, like the moment before an explosion. $5 billion. Nathan whispered, his usual polished demeanor beginning to fracture. Uncle Thomas snatched the phone, eyes wide as he scanned the article, his mouth contorting in disbelief. This can't be real. There must be a mistake. No mistake, I said quietly, my words as sharp as steel. If anything, they undervalued us. After this morning's partnership deal, we're closing in on $7 billion. My father sank slowly into his chair, the color draining from his face. But you never told us. I met his gaze directly, unwavering. You never asked. You were all too busy organizing my rescue, never once stopping to consider that I didn't need saving. I reached for my tablet and swiped to a live feed of our headquarters. It wasn't the cramped workspace they imagined, but a sleek, modern, 40-story tower I had purchased in secret the year before. The video showed my team, engineers, software architects, futurists, bringing to life technology that had just rendered every existing defense system obsolete. This, I said, gesturing to the screen, is Nova Shield, a quantum-powered, AI-driven defense network. It doesn't just protect data. It revolutionizes the very concept of security. I looked at each of them, one by one. Every government, every bank, every major corporation will rely on this. And I own 60%. As I spoke, my mother's phone buzzed relentlessly. One notification after another. The story had gone viral. CNBC, Bloomberg, TechCrunch, Ellaner Kaine, the billionaire who built a fortress in silence. Nathan stared at me, stunned. The mask of confidence he wore so well was cracking. But all this time, that tiny apartment, that old car. Choices, I said, leaning forward. I don't need a penthouse to prove my success. I don't need a luxury car to announce it. Winning isn't about designer brands or office titles. It's about legacy. And mine is reshaping the future. Still gripping my mother's phone, Uncle Thomas muttered, "The investors, they're saying you've secured funding from Titan Ventures, Oracle, even the Pentagon?" I nodded. We've kept things discreet. National security protocols. You understand. My father's voice was barely audible. Why didn't you say something? I stood up slowly, brushing the wrinkles from the same gray sweater they'd mocked. Because real success doesn't beg for applause. It demands your full attention. And while you were too busy stacking Nathan's bonuses against my silence, I was building something that will outlast us all. Without another word, I turned and walked out, leaving them all speechless. My phone lit up just as I stepped outside, a message from Lena, my COO. Stock up 35% in pre-market. CNN studio ready. I smiled and climbed into the waiting car. The city skyline shimmered through the window, a constellation of ambition stitched across the night. I had claimed every light for myself. Later that evening, I sat in a studio, looking directly into the camera as I introduced Nova Shield to the world. I spoke about vision, about the sleepless nights spent coding in darkness while my family wrote my obituary in whispers. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about proving something deeper, to myself, that the risk was worth it, that I could build something meaningful even when no one believed in me. Especially when no one believed in me. And if you're watching this now, and someone is telling you that your dream is too unrealistic, too uncertain, too far-fetched, don't just prove them wrong. Prove yourself right. Build your empire quietly. Let the world hear it when it roars.